All right, guys, we're going to get going here in just a hot second. I'm working through. I got the new computer, which is great. It's fantastic, and it's um, it's all about getting it all set up and ready to go. I don't have the mic set up or anything yet. I wasn't planning on there being a major hurricane headed toward the United States before I got all this set up, but nevertheless, here we are. And I know a lot of you folks are probably watching Ida closely. Um, I'd rather be doing something else personally. You're sitting outside of the pool or something. But you got to do what you got to do, right? So we'll get cracking here and get to talking about everything. I wanted to show you guys first things first. This is something from Dr. Kim Wood up there at Mississippi State, and this is just Ida basically getting itself wrapped up and doing its best to get better organized. This is the visible satellite from today, so it's a little bit of a shorter loop because the sun's only been up for so long, but you can kind of get an idea about how much intensification it's going through even just this morning and through midday. And here's another shot of it from the Tropical Tidbits site from Levi Cohen. You can see it's going over one of the islands here right now. This is just a tropical storm from the National Hurricane Center. In fact, I'll run over this first. From the National Hurricane Center as of the 11 a.m. advisory. Wind at 65 miles an hour, moving off to the northwest at 15. Again, this is as of 11 o'clock. And you can kind of see where it is there compared to where it is. Let me go one more over now. And, moving at 15 miles an hour, it's made it, a good chunk of the way toward Cuba, anticipated to be a hurricane when it makes landfall in Cuba. One thing I did want to go over real quick is the Ida checklist for this. I know a lot of you folks have a lot of questions, and rightfully so. I've heard from a lot of you guys asking, like, hey, is this going to be, another Katrina? I lived through Katrina. I don't want to live through another Katrina. And let me tell you, you don't have to tell me twice. I wouldn't want to live through that the first time. So for you folks that are having kind of trepidations about dealing with it a second time, I just want to let you guys know this is kind of what you can expect from this. A landfalling Ida will produce some very heavy rainfall and the possibility for some flooding. Wind gusts to up to 120 miles an hour. Storm surge along the coast. What you should prepare for if you're watching this along the Gulf Coast, power outages that last at least a few hours. Some places are going to be without power for a long time, maybe days. Some folks, depending on where this makes landfall, could be weeks without power. But that's, again, right along the coast that we're concerned about that right now. For folks that are living inland, this isn't a situation, as at least right now, where we anticipate places inland to be without power for weeks. Days, sure. Hours, probably. But weeks is not something we anticipate at this point. Trees to get blown over, branches to fall down. These are all things that you should be preparing for right now. Localized flooding and the possibility of dealing with tornado warnings. So localized flooding, you're going to see somewhere between 2, 3, 5, 8, 15 inches of rain, depending on your location along the Gulf Coast. You're going to see some type of localized flooding. Even if it's brief, you're going to end up underneath one of these tropical showers. Maybe the water comes up in the streams or the gullies. Maybe it goes across your road for a little while. But if you live in a place where it floods easy, keep that in mind. The possibility for tornado warnings, particularly on that right front quadrant. So if you are off to the east side of the center of the storm as it makes landfall, and this is going to be a pretty fat storm. This is likely going to be pretty hefty, a couple of 100 miles across. So even if the landfall is in, let's say, Grand Isle, you folks in Loosedale, Mississippi, probably still have to deal with the possibility for a couple of tornado warnings, and that may stretch into the Florida Panhandle. If this makes landfall, over toward, let's say, extremely far off to the east, we say Vermilion Bay or something like that. Or Sabine Pass. Let's go even farther off the list. Sabine Pass. That right front quadrant means that most of Louisiana and even parts of Mississippi will be dealing with a possibility for tornado warnings. So This isn't going to be a localized thing to right where the center is, but it's going to stretch out. It's going to be a fat storm. Make sure you've got water to last yourself for a couple of days if you're in the path of this storm. And this doesn't mean if you're in the cone. If you're in the cone, definitely. But even if you're living across South Mississippi, Lower Alabama, even the Florida Panhandle, I just make sure you got water to last you for a couple of days. Some non-perishable food to last for a couple of days as well. Make sure you've got all your medicines in there. That's not on my list here, but make sure you've got all your medicines that you need too. If you take allergy meds or you take, heartburn medication, or even if you've got prescriptions, make sure you've got those available. Charge all those cell phones and all of your devices, especially if you got kids. Make sure those are all charged up and you've got maybe an extra battery pack or one of those portable wind-up chargers you can get from Midland that has the weather radio on it. And have a way, speaking of which, to receive those warnings from the National Weather Service as well. So again, here's a look at the forecast cone. This is the 11 a.m. advisory. Somebody just posted a comment a couple of seconds ago and said that this thing was already a Category 1. So what we can do is let's go back over to the Hurricane Center and see if they've said that yet. Yes, they have. Max sustained wind of 75 miles an hour. It is now a hurricane. That happened as of 1:15 Eastern. So that was about 30 minutes ago. So again, I'm getting all this set up. I apologize for passing along bad information there. This is the 11 a.m. advisory as of 1:15. Let's see if I can't get an updated image in here for you guys. See if they've... No, they haven't quite built a new graphic yet. But nevertheless, it is now a hurricane. The latest forecast, within the next 3 days, the most likely arrival of tropical storm force wind along the coast at about 8 a.m. on Sunday, inland Sunday at 8 p.m., and pretty well inland by 8 a.m. on Monday. And you can see the percent chance that you deal with tropical storm force wind pretty high along the Louisiana coast, a little bit lower along the Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida Panhandle coasts, as well as the Texas coast back off to the west. Here's the chance you deal with 58 mile an hour winds or greater, and it's pretty low once you get away from the center. I have a feeling that is going to get a bit fatter as this storm itself gets a bit fatter as we head through the next couple of days. Folks, adding to the checklist here, this isn't an all-inclusive checklist. You got to go over to FEMA.ready.gov or whatever, and they've got like the 3-page checklist if you need one. This is just a quick down and dirty one, but yeah, make sure you got gas in the car and make sure propane tanks are taken care of and stuff too. So I think these wind probabilities are going to get a little bit wider. This is kind of my thinking in terms of wind gusts. Now, this isn't for sustained wind. This is just wind gusts. A tropical shower blows through, a rain band thunderstorm blows on by. What's the peak wind gust that you can see from one of those? I think where that yellow line is here across parts of Alabama and getting into parts of central and northwestern Mississippi, I think your peak wind gust is about 60 miles an hour. That means, one of those severe thunderstorm warnings that they issue for some of the rain bands, I think those could probably stretch as far off to the east as the east side of Mobile Bay, and then up some of the counties, the western counties of Alabama and eastern Mississippi. 70 mile an hour wind gusts kind of bisects the Pine Belt in half here. So the far eastern, column of counties in Mississippi, and then as you make your way back off to the north and northwest. But you can see how quickly along the coast it goes from peak wind gusts of 70 to 85 to 100 to 120 miles an hour. And again, this is wind gust. This isn't sustained wind. This is wind gust. 70 mile an hour again there. 85 kind of cross cuts through the kind of the center of the Pine Belt, and then 100 for extreme southern and western Mississippi and most of the parishes of Louisiana, and then 120 down into the toes of Louisiana as you make your way down toward New Orleans and Grand Isle, folks out in like Morgan City and stuff. And again, this is wind gusts. This isn't the sustained wind. Your sustained wind of 120, I think that's what the Hurricane Center is going with now, right along the coast is probably about as rough as it's going to get. We've also got a fair amount of rain to deal with, somewhere between 6 to 10 inches of rain. You can see the orange here across a big stretch of Mississippi and Louisiana, You've got up over 10 to 15 inches across, again, kind of the toes of Louisiana. You see that one splotch in there of 15 to 20 inches of rain just off to the south of New Orleans. I would suspect as we go through time that this 10 to 15 inch may kind of stretch a little bit more into parts of Mississippi. This 6 to 10 may stretch a little further off to the east in Mississippi, and this 4 to 6 may sneak its way into parts of Alabama as well. And then that's kind of the concern, and I want to go back to my checklist here. The rain is why I'm more concerned about trees being blown over and branches to fall down. Look, I get it. This seems probably kind of scary. You know, I get it. You don't have to worry about this as much. The wind gusts, right? I mean, you got to prepare for it, but don't let this like get you all too concerned here, because we're talking about gusts. This is, pretty quick 1 minute gust. A little thunderstorm rolls through. Branches may fall out of trees, and trees may get uprooted, given the amount of rain that is anticipated to fall. So it's probably not going to take one of these 60 or 70 mile an hour gusts to knock over a tree if you get 10 inches of rain. So if you're planning on riding this out wherever it is that you are, get a good lay of the land, what the trees look like outside of your house. Keep in mind what direction the wind will be coming from. If you're on the east side of the center of the storm, it will be coming in from the southeast or the east, or early on, maybe even from the northeast. And then as it passes on by, then it'll be coming back out of the south and eventually out of the southwest. So you kind of go all the way around the clock for the most part as this thing kind of passes on through the area. But kind of keep that in mind. How strong is the strongest wind going to be, and from what direction is it going to come relative to wherever it is that you live, so that you can kind of keep an eyeball on some of those trees and make sure that they're not, falling through the house while you guys are taking cover in there. I've heard from a lot of folks saying that they're evacuating from wherever it is that they are. They said, I learned from Katrina, I'm not sticking around, I'm heading out of town. More power to you. Just make sure you're good and patient when you do that, because other people are also trying to evacuate from wherever it is that they are. And everyone wants to be safe. A lot of folks have been asking, I'm trying to get to X, Y, or Z place. Is this safe? Go as far away as you feel comfortable. If that's Oklahoma City, so be it. If it's Shreveport, okay. If you just want to go to Jackson, that's fine too. Whatever you feel comfortable doing is up to you. That you will still have impacts across parts of Mississippi. You're not going to have any impacts in Oklahoma City, but if you went to somewhere like Birmingham and Montgomery, you may still have to deal with tornado warnings from some of the outer bands. I don't think you completely escape the potential for dealing with weather from Ida if you're in, parts of Alabama. You'd have to go probably all the way to Atlanta, I suppose, to avoid every impact, but go somewhere where you feel safe, wherever that is. And if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to hunker down here and I'm going to feel safe right in my own house, that's fine too. Just make sure that you've got enough supplies, and again, you kind of have a good lay of the land, and you kind of know what to expect from Mother Nature when Mother Nature shows up. Now, all of that being said, if you live along the coast, I know local emergency management officials are starting to mandate evacuations in certain places. So if you're watching this along the coast, particularly in Louisiana and Mississippi, I would highly recommend, instead of listening to me, you listen to your local emergency management officials. In fact, I would pretty much say that anyway, no matter where you are. Those folks have a very good lay of your local land, and probably will give you better tips than I could ever dream to. But your storm surge is going to be a little bit less as you head off to the east. 7 to 11 feet is the anticipation right now along the toes of Louisiana, and 4 to 7 along the Mississippi coast, 2 to 4 as you go all the way back off to the west. They'll probably, I would imagine, trim that back a little bit to maybe 1 to 3, and they'll probably bump these up off to the east. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets stretched all the way out to like Destin or maybe even Panama City. Because again, how fat this storm is going to be. Model consensus with this is reasonable. For the most part, a lot of the models take this into the Louisiana coast. The last couple of days, we've had a couple of stragglers to the east, a couple of stragglers off to the west. But after getting the hurricane hunters in there, there's a center on this storm now. The models are getting a pretty good handle on where it's going to go. In fact, here's where it originally, the model said it was. You know, a couple of hours later, this is where they said it would be, and then we kind of go back over to the image, and hey, look at that. That's exactly where it is. So, you know, we're feeling pretty good about the forecast models here. And not only did they initialize in the right place, but we went, you know, 12 hours down the road, and that's where we are. So that's good news. In terms of the overall intensity, I've had a lot of questions about this, that how strong is this going to get? I actually got a really good question over on Twitter, and I don't recall who sent it to me, and I apologize about this. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they said, hey, Nick, how come that all you meteorologists are saying this is going to be a big storm when I look at the forecast models and all of them were saying like Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3. And everyone said, oh, Cat 4, maybe even a Cat 5. What gives? We'll get into that here in a hot second, but over on Levi Cohen's Tropical Tidbits page, you can see that there's a pretty wide swath of where this could be in 48 hours. It could still be a tropical storm, or I guess a tropical storm again, now that it's already a hurricane, or all the way up to a Cat 4. So that's a pretty big spread in just 48 hours, and it gives you kind of an idea about the slope of intensification that some of these models are projecting with Ida. Now, we know now that it's already a hurricane. So this was 12Z, so this is 7 a.m., and here we are 5 hours later, and it's already Cat 1 hurricane. So the slope for this is actually even steeper. So we're, 5 hours. I think you guys can see my mouse when you're watching, but, that puts us about right here. So we're already outdoing the curve and the slope of the model intensity models. The reason is the one thing that they kind of struggle with is how warm the water is down there. And it is plenty warm, as most of you know that live along the Gulf Coast. But on top of that, the loop current is out there, and unfortunately, let's get a little tighter in here, it's going to traverse right across Cuba and right down that loop current, going over quite possibly the absolute warmest by volume and temperature water in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to kind of traipse right down a path. So you guys, those of you that do remember Katrina, it came across Florida, and it went across and kind of up the loop current. Didn't go right down the street, but it crossed enough of it, and it stayed on top of it for long enough for it to explode into this big Category 5 storm out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Well, this one is not only going to be moving across water that is at depth equally as warm, but it's going to be doing it for a bit longer. So, I mean, not to give anybody kind of a brief heart attack there, but just to kind of put it in kind of a factual perspective. That's not a hyperbole. That is literally factual, that it is going across the same thing that is, for the most part, just as warm. It was a little bit warmer, I will say this, it was a little bit warmer in the center of the loop current for Katrina at depth, but for the most part, they're similar situations, the biggest difference being that this one is going to be over the warmer water for a little bit longer, which is why a lot of us meteorologists are concerned about it really getting its act together pretty quickly. And if we go over and take a look at the GOES satellite imagery from NOAA, you can see that this little area of low pressure right here is something worth watching, and I really hope that COD is working. Perfect. Not Call of Duty for you gamers, but College of DuPage Meteorology, looking at their GOES 16 data. This little, and I really hope you guys can see my mouse. If for whatever reason you can't, somebody put a message in here and say, hey Nick, we actually can't see your mouse, and then I'll figure out how to annotate and stuff for the next video. But there is an upper level low that's actually spinning its way through kind of the central part of the Gulf of Mexico right now. The original idea with this was that it was going to slide a little farther off to the north and erode away at the ridge of high pressure that is back in behind it. That hasn't happened. It actually continues to move off to the west. As Ida continues to move off to the northwest, you guys may recall Laura and Marco from last year. Remember, they did kind of a jig in the Gulf of Mexico where one kind of spun the other one, and Laura ended up a little bit further off to the east than originally kind of shown in some of the models because they were doing that little bit of a dance. This is a similar situation, which is why I'm and have been, and you guys who've been following me on Facebook forever probably recall me posting about this a couple of days ago, a little more concerned about impacts for Mississippi and Alabama. Louisiana, yes, we always knew that Louisiana was in play, but I said a couple of days ago, I'm starting to get a little more concerned because of the interaction with not only this upper level low, with the ridge of high pressure that was out here in terms of guiding Ida, or Invest 99L at that point, toward the northern Gulf Coast. I tend to think that, unfortunately, it's probably going to lean on the eastern side of that cone as it moves inland. So if we kind of go back to our cone here, if it leans on the eastern side of this, then we're talking about impacts that are maybe a little bit closer to Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. And this is why I continue to mention you folks in Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle than the rest of Louisiana. Now, this thing is going to be fat. It's going to be pretty big, which means the wind field is going to be very large. So even if it doesn't hug the eastern side of the cone, it probably isn't going to change much of the impacts anyway. It's still going to be pretty breezy, pretty rainy. You're going to have rain bands and the possibility for localized flooding, wind damage, power outages, and tornado warnings. But do know that if this is to lean along the eastern edge, it continues to ride up this very warm water, and you could see it. Well, let me get back over it goes. You can see it probably gain a fair amount of strength once it gets over Cuba. The problem with it going over Cuba is it's probably going to kind of mess with it a little bit, and that's going to allow the wind field to. This is why I think the storm is going to be super fat. It wraps itself up, it goes over Cuba, and then as it kind of gets beat up a little bit by Cuba, that faster inner core of wind that's formed spreads out a little bit, kind of diffuses across the rest of the storm itself. And then as it reorganizes itself, it builds that stronger core inside. Well, guess what? All that other wind is already raised farther out from the center. Currently, I think tropical storm force wind only extends from the center on the northeast side, something like 30 miles, and the rest of it is like 5 to 10 miles or something like that out from the center. As this goes across Cuba, the inner core of that strongest wind probably going to die a little bit, but that tropical storm force wind, instead of just being 30, 5, 5, and 5, is going to be like 50, 20, 20, and 20. Then it gets into the rest of the Gulf of Mexico. You start to see it wrap itself back up again, and then that wind field grows and grows and grows as the inner pressure drops lower and lower and lower. Because the only reason you get wind in these tropical systems is just the difference between how low the pressure is in the center of the storm and how high the pressure is on the outside of that storm. All the wind is trying to go from the high pressure to the low pressure. The lower the pressure in the center, the faster that air wants to get there. It's just the atmosphere trying to balance itself out a little bit. And I wanted to kind of poke at some of the model data in here to give you guys kind of an idea about what I was talking about with the upper level low. It doesn't really show up on here, but that big ridge of high pressure that's back off to the west, you can see how it kind of noses its way off to the west. And with this model, it noses far enough off to the west that you get landfall across the central Louisiana coast. However, if it doesn't nose its way off to the west far enough, that's when you get it to kind of glide its way on the eastern side of the cone, and you end up with something like a Louisiana and perhaps even a Mississippi, a secondary, but Mississippi landfall as well. I'll say this, the enhanced display, our EDD, is showing, a lot of people asking, well, am I in the cone? Well, let's show the cone. And there it is. Tropical storm watches in effect along the coast. Same goes along the Louisiana coast with hurricane watches. You can see kind of the center of this thing anticipated to be a Category 3 at arrival. Landfall quickly falling apart to a tropical storm and lifting off and wrapping around to the northeast, leaving a lot of Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle with impacts from this for most likely the longest time, given that you're on kind of the eastern side of this thing. We also have two other areas out here worth mentioning. Neither of them are necessarily headed anywhere close to land, but worth mentioning. And there's another place, another area of interest back in behind this one, back off to the west. So that's kind of the breakdown of the way things are shaking out right now. Hopefully that answers a lot of questions, but I know you guys have more. I've seen plenty of them in the chat here. Unfortunately, when doing this on the computer, as you guys know, when I'm on the phone, I like to swipe back through and go through everyone's questions. I don't know if it's going to let me go all the way back through everyone's questions. So, if you have any, fire when ready. I'll try and swing back through some of these, but hopefully, if you've got questions, you can kind of like throw them in here, and I'll do my best to kind of answer them. Let's see here. Now, for folks that need electricity, actually, that's a very good question. For you folks that need electricity because you're on a breathing machine, for example, I would make sure that you have a place to be that's definitely going to keep electricity. Because with this kind of a system and with how much rain, it's not going to take that much wind to perhaps knock out power. And it may not be that you're without power forever. It may just be for a couple of hours, but that may be a couple of hours too long. So if you're in that situation or you know someone that's in that situation, make sure that they've got a backup plan. And they've got some way to make sure that they've got electricity or a backup plan to make sure that they can keep it running, a generator, something, somewhere to go, to make sure that they can continue to have easy access to electric. If this thing continues to gain strength, would this be more dangerous at landfall than Katrina, since Katrina was a 3 at landfall, right? Yes, Marissa, you are right. That was a 3 at landfall. But the big thing with Katrina is that it was very strong, and then it was kind of weakening as it moved ashore for many different reasons. And in fact, I was having a conversation just recently at the conference I was at with a different meteorologist at the NWS office in Mobile about Katrina moving ashore, and he was looking into a lot of stuff about why it was weakening and everything, and how every next storm is not going to be like that in terms of weakening as it moves ashore. That is not going to be something that happens frequently in the future, because recently the Gulf of Mexico has been churned up so much that you don't have as cool of shelf waters. So the short answer to that is, does it make it more dangerous? Is it depends on your location, but generally, yes. This is going to be a very serious situation for a lot of folks, particularly those that are close to the coast. Flight from Gulfport on Tuesday. Should I try to change it to fly out from Mobile? I would, Patty, if you can. I definitely would. If my guess would be that by Tuesday it'll probably be okay in Gulfport. But the question would be, can you get there if there are a bunch of trees down? Sometimes when you've got a landfalling tropical system like this, they'll fly the planes away, to protect the planes. They'll fly them to a different airport, and then they have to fly them back in. And so then you've got delays and everything else. So I don't know. If it were me, and, I don't know that they would charge you even for this. Say, hey, look, there's a hurricane coming. Can I just fly out of Mobile? Is that a problem? I would hope that most airlines are understanding of that, but I can't speak for airlines. That as much I know is true. Lived through Camille and Katrina and not liking the sound of this one. Yeah, Carol. This is going to be a kind of a rough one, unfortunately. For whomever gets it. And again, I really want to stress that most of the impacts for this are going to be along the coast. You are still going to have impacts inland. Most of that is going to be some very heavy rain and some brief, pretty gusty winds, some brief, very strong winds at times from some of the rain bands and the tropical showers. But I will say that the vast majority of the roughest part of this is going to be along the coast. And for those that are trying to draw analogs between Katrina and this one, if this blows up now, gets kind of beat up over Cuba as it's doing right now, if we get another inner core and that goes through an eye wall replacement cycle, and then it replaces its eye wall. The wind field spreads out, and it gets another tight core before moving inland. Then for whoever's in the the core of that closest to the eye wall folks, those are going to be the ones that deal with that even a little further inland. A lot like Katrina. It's going to be whoever this runs into, it'll be their version of Katrina. A lot like Laura was Lake Charles' version of Katrina. Harvey was in a very wet version of Katrina for them. That was their Katrina. So whoever is in the path of this one, yeah, this is going to be a pretty rough situation. For folks that are asking about specific counties, as we move later in the day into the evening, what I am going to try to do for everyone that's out there watching is I'm going to try and do one of my county breakdowns for everyone. So hang in there. We can't really give county by county specifics yet, but I think I'll be able to do that by later today, and that's the goal. So if you're wondering, hey, if I'm in Wayne County, I'm in Lamar County, I'm in Pike County, I'm in Washington County, Alabama, I'm in Wilkinson Parish, whatever, I'll do my best to get that for you guys a little bit later today. We have an option to leave Picayune to Vicksburg. Given the current track, do you feel the impacts will be similar, or would Vicksburg fare better? Vicksburg is going to be a little much better. Let me back up. It's going to be much better than Picayune. It may show on the map here. I can go back to the map here. You may say to yourself, well, wait a second. No, Picayune is right in, well, hold on. Picayune's like right in here, and Vicksburg's like up here. Okay, so I mean, 100 to 120 mile an hour gusts down here, or around 85 mile an hour gusts possible. That's not a guaranteed wind speed. That's the strongest possible gust. You may never see that. One of those rain bands may not move over you. But the likelihood that you get a 85 mile an hour wind gusts in Picayune is much higher than it is up in Vicksburg. So if you're asking one or the other, I would lean toward Vicksburg. I would lean toward the other. So this thing leans on the east. Would that put pretty much everywhere in Mississippi, regardless of coast or not? Marissa, that's another good question. I think as you move inland far enough, it wouldn't be. This is going to lose, let me back up. We've learned over the last couple of years, these things don't always lose strength immediately, but this one should lose strength as it moves inland. If, for whatever reason, it does what Michael did a couple of years ago, and it's still wrapping itself up as it moves ashore, then sure, once it moves inland, it's still going to be pile driving and gaining strength. But I don't think it puts all of Mississippi or even everywhere south of I-20 in kind of the highest risk level. But it certainly would increase the risk for more impacts across parts of South Mississippi. Let's see here. Yeah, and for folks asking about counties, again, I'll do my best to try and give you guys an update a little bit later. How wide is this thing currently? That's a really good question. Kind of looking at it, I think it's still pretty small, honestly. If you count kind of all the way out to the outer rain bands, you're probably talking about 100 and probably 200 miles across. But unfortunately, since I don't work at the TV station anymore, can't put a ruler on it. That was always my favorite thing to do. Look into these storms, and you get on the computer, and I draw a little ruler across, and be like, oh man, it's 350 miles across. I can't do that anymore. Lost my ability to have that kind of fun. So I would say it's a couple hundred miles across at this point. Go over the landfall stuff again. Yes, you got it, Christy. I will. And for folks that are asking questions, if you feel like I'm not getting to your question, just hang in there. I'm trying to get through these one by one. I'm not trying to leave folks out. So let's go over landfall stuff again. So, most likely arrival times of a tropical storm force wind. The National Hurricane Center puts this out to try and give you guys a good idea about when to be prepared by. And 8 a.m. on Sunday for extreme southern Louisiana coast. By Sunday evening for most of southern Louisiana, South Mississippi, lower Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. And then through the overnight hours is Sunday and into early Monday morning as you make your way farther off to the north of that, with the peak wind gust speed on here, absolute peak, not guaranteed, but peak potential of 60 miles an hour as far off to the east as the, Daphne, the east side of Mobile Bay, and up toward Meridian, and as you make your way, all the way up toward like Starkville. 70 mile an hour wind from, Jackson and Madison all the way back down to like Pascagoula. 85 from, let's say, Vicksburg to Biloxi Gulfport, and then, from like just east of Bay St. Louis, out through Macomb and into parts of the parishes of Louisiana, maybe out toward Alexandria, maybe 100 mile an hour wind gust possible, and then 120 down across parts of South Louisiana. That does include the city of New Orleans. And that's just greater than 120. If this thing comes ashore with sustained wind of 130, you better believe that they're going to have gusts higher than 120 miles an hour. When can we expect that county by county forecast? Mike, that'll be out a little bit later tonight. Those take a very long time to do, as you can imagine. And so I don't want to put a number on, like a deadline for myself, because it's 1:15 now. When I did those at WDAM, I would do those in the morning and at night. They took about 3 or 4 hours to put together. So even if I got done with this right now, and I worked all the way until supper, you're not getting this thing until 6. And that's if I started working on it right now. So I would anticipate no sooner than 8 p.m. If I can get it done before 8, great. But I would assume no sooner than 8 o'clock tonight, honestly. And folks asking, should I leave Picayune? If you don't feel comfortable being there, I'd leave. If dealing with wind gusts up over 100 miles an hour makes you feel uncomfortable, I'd leave. That's up to you, folks. I can't tell you what to do. You guys know me. Unless it's going to kill you, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Tornadoes coming. All right, take cover. I'm telling you what to do. Hurricanes coming. All right. How does it look at your house? Because some of you folks, maybe you don't have any trees around your house. Maybe you clear cut your land, and you're going, I'm on the backside of a hill, clear cut my land, 300 feet above everyone else. My house is on stilts. I don't have to worry about flooding. I don't have to worry about trees. I got hurricane cliffs. It's designed, it's a concrete barrier that can handle a Cat 5. Well, sure, you can stay where you are. But for everyone else, I would really take a good look at things before deciding what to do. When's landfall? At some point in time, Sunday night or into probably Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Sunday night at some point. Maybe if it slows down early Monday morning. That's very kind of you, Sunshine. There are days I wish I hadn't left too. I do miss everyone in the Pine Belt. But I'll say this, still here. I mean, you're watching me right now, so I obviously I didn't go too far. I care about you guys. So I don't mind jumping on and keeping everyone updated. I haven't dealt with this close to the coast before. Is it worth evacuating from the coast of Louisiana? Amber, check in with your local emergency management officials. If it were me, if you're asking Nick, if you lived on the coast, what would you do? I'm leaving. I'm not sticking around the coast to find out what's going to happen. I like my stuff. I like living more. So I would, if it was me, I would leave. But I don't know your specific situation, so I can't really speak to it. But I would check with your local emergency management officials. Ask them. Call them up. Look them up on Twitter or Facebook and say, hey, this is where I'm living. Are there evacuation orders in place? Do I need to leave? Is this something that has to happen? And there are some places that are doing mandatory evacuations, so please do keep that in mind as well. Let's see. I'm trying to keep up with comments and questions here as best I can, but I think I'm going too slow. You guys know me. I'm full of hot air. Traveling Texas, going I-20 west in Jackson was reported closed this weekend due to construction and must do detours. Oh, yeah. Well, if you're, yeah, so thanks for the heads up. Yeah, if you're going to be traveling north, kind of keep that in mind. I-20 construction. When is it? I suppose not under construction. That and I-10, I feel like, are just like constant states of, my goodness. Let's see here. Yeah. That's actually, Selena, a good point. For folks that are evacuating, do it now. Think about doing it as soon as you can. Don't wait until this thing is just off the coast. Don't wait until you look out there and you're going, oh, I see the clouds from that Cat 5 or that Cat 4 or that Cat 3. Maybe I should think about leaving now, because then you're going to get stuck on the roads. And that's the last place you want to be. Be proactive and do what you can to leave as soon as you can if you are going to leave. The love bug's showing up. Yeah, buckle up for love bugs, friends. My goodness. Let's see. How can you track the path of the storm? Brittany, that's a very good question. You can do, if you're just asking generally, like where can you go, you can go to I think it's hurricanes.gov is a good place to go. If you want to look at cool pictures like this, Tropical Tidbits, as you can see here, is a great website to go to. You can just click on satellite imagery. In fact, I can take you through, and there it is, Tropical Storm Ida, now hurricane, of course. And you can look at all different types of, let's look at long wave infrared. There you go. That's what we were looking at before. So that's where you can go to kind of look at cool imagery. Let's see. Are the winds winds we are getting now due to Ida? No, the wind you're seeing right now is just wind. Once it's a little bit closer to the coast, the wind will pick up. But it's still a little too far away. Why couldn't Karen be next on the list? Oh, goodness sakes, you guys. May I speak to your manager? You guys are too funny. All right. Other questions in here. Any chance this storm is going through any kind of shift? Yeah, Nicole, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, and that is that I have a sneaking suspicion given, where's my cone? There's my cone. Let's see if this is updated. Aha, there we go. 2 p.m. update is now out. It is a Hurricane Ida. So I've been yakking at you guys for so long that the update came out. So now you've got a hurricane, and still anticipated to be a major hurricane, still moving to the northwest at 15 miles an hour, wind at 75. The sneaking suspicion that I have is that it may ride up kind of the eastern side of the cone. Given a couple of different things, there's a upper level low in here, and they'll probably do a little jig, a little dance out here with each other. And then the ridge of high pressure, which is back off to the northeast of this thing, may also kind of play a role in kind of where this thing is guided. And I tend to think that it'll likely be guided up kind of the east side. That said, with this latest from the National Hurricane Center, it looks like maybe the slightest jog back west. So we'll see. If it does do any shifting, though, I would lean toward it leaning off to the east side of things than anything else. New Orleans, okay, Jimmy is here saying New Orleans is under a mandatory evacuation. I haven't seen that yet, personally. I'm not saying that Jimmy's wrong. I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet, but that is what was just posted on here. How do low and high pressure systems steer storms like this? Brad, that is a fantastic question. I wish I could draw on the screen. All right, so areas of low pressure, like this upper level low here and, Ida over here, something called the Fujiwara effect. They do a little dance with each other. You can almost think of it kind of like magnets kind of do a little, like you try to put two positives together and they kind of do a little, like they don't, you know. So it's a completely different set of physics, but a reasonable, I think, analogy. And so they do a little dance with each other. Ridges of high pressure, these systems kind of glide around the outer periphery. A ridge you can almost think of taking. I'm not going to turn this upside down because I was actually just drinking some juice out of this with lunch. I had some V8, but you can almost think of me if flipping this upside down, like flipping a bowl upside down. The storms will tend to go around. Ooh, I know. Hold on. Hang in there, folks. It's visual aid time. I need to get my secondary camera set up on like a whiteboard or something. All right. So you end up. Okay. So I'm just gonna. Hopefully this water doesn't spill on me. So storms go around ridges of high pressure. You can think of this as a ridge. So if a storm is riding, it kind of goes and kind of curls around the ridge. Over here, if you've got a ridge of high pressure off to the northeast, if I'm this storm, so say this is coming in like so, it's kind of pushing to the west southwest on the same map. This storm is going to kind of whip kind of around it. It's going to kind of get pushed off to the west further. But if for whatever reason it doesn't make it as far because there's an upper level low nearby and that kind of erodes, it kind of chisels away and erodes away at the edge of it. That ridge doesn't make it as far off to the west, which allows Ida then, also doing the little jig with the upper level low, to go east, further to the east. Hold on, let me make this right for you guys. Further to the east for you guys, and further to the east. Sorry, I keep getting buzzed over here. Further to the east, and that ridge isn't as far off to the west, so that also allows it to go a little further to the east, which is why I think it'll end up leaning on the east side of the track. All right, how do meteorologists track the path? Like, how do you know how far or where it's going to hit? How can you track the storm from Cuba that's supposed to hit Lake Charles? Oh, Brittany, that's a big question, and a really good one, too. The same way that I was just explaining everything, so we do a lot of math and figure this all out, and then we have computer models that we can run using that same math, which is, so the underlying math is the thing that we all know that explains in like the easy water bottle terms of what the atmosphere does. And so that's how we do a lot of this. We figure out where the center is. The hurricane hunters fly in there and they fly around, and all they do is they just hold a little pressure gauge out the window. They don't really physically hold it out the window. It's on the outside of the plane. But they just find where's the lowest pressure. Wherever the lowest pressure is, that's the center. And then you drop that on a map, and then you fly around for a while, and then you find that lowest pressure again, and then you say, well, where's the pressure relative to where it was before? It's over here. And how much time went by? An hour. How many miles is that? 15. So it's moving 15 miles every hour off to the northwest because that's where the new lowest pressure was, and the lowest pressure was back here. You do that enough times and you start to get a little path for where it's going. And then once you do that, you can put that into the computer models and say, okay, well, the path it was taking was like this. Where is it going to go next? And the computers run all the math, and they do everything that we used to have to do by hand, and you physically can't do it for the atmosphere. It's too much. You need a supercomputer to do it, and that's how they figure out where it's going to go, all these models. And there's a ton of different models kicking out a ton of different options for where each model thinks this thing is going to go, and then the humans get in there and they say, okay, well, this model says it's going to go that way, but that one's not good for tropical stuff. This model says it's going to go that way, but it thinks that ridge of high pressure is over here, and I don't think it's going to be over there. And through basically just trimming the fat and getting rid of things that you think isn't going to happen, Sherlock Holmes, his old saying, once you've basically removed all of the things that you think are impossible, what's left is the answer, no matter how impossible. And so that's kind of through deduction how we figure out where these things are going to go. Let's see here. I'm following gold updates for 7 years. Okay. Everyone stay safe, please, 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 please. What is Ida's latitude? Let's go back to the map. 22 north? Yeah, okay, so like 21.8 north. And probably 83.7 west. Okay, Nick, you're an idiot. You can look on here. 21.6 north and 82.7 west. I was close. No, I give myself a B plus for effort. Is it still possibly going to hit a Cat 4? Tammy, I don't think that there's any reason to think that it couldn't make a run at being a Category 5 if everything lines up the way that it possibly could. Right now, the only thing limiting it is going to be the interaction it has with Cuba and the projected path that it takes over the warmest water of the Gulf of Mexico, and exactly what happens with that upper level low. If there is there any shear that's involved? Right now it's dealing with some very light southwesterly shear, but if that continues, that may limit its growth. But for the most part, fortunately, the sky's kind of the limit with this one as we move through the next couple of days. Let's see. Any other questions on here? When should the first feeder bands with wind and rain show up? Cynthia, that's a great question, and that's actually this little guy, that one, that I made. A very artistic drawing, as you can see. I took one art class in college, and I don't know how I didn't fail it. I'll say this about my art professor, just as an aside. She used to talk about how each line tells a story. She says every line that you draw tells its own story. She was speaking to artistic people who understand that. The science guy over here, is kind of like laughing. I'm like looking at each line I'm drawing on the thing. I'm like, okay, little line, what story are you telling? I'm a bad artist. Okay, what's the story over here? Still a bad artist. Great story. Chapter 3, still not great at art. I not great, Bob. So this is kind of a look at when I think the first wind is going to show up, and again, your absolute peak wind gusts possible, at each given time. So starting as early as Sunday night, starting as early as Sunday morning. That's from basically a mixture of the National Hurricane Center and some of the latest data that I've been looking at. Let's see here. Other questions. This thing keeps bouncing all over the place. I think I have caught all the way back up. More people asking, hey, what about where I'm living? And if you're just tuning in, I am going to have an update about that. I'm going to try and get a county by county breakdown for you guys a little bit later this evening. Like I was saying earlier, those things take a long time to do. I'm happy to do them, but man, oh man, it takes time. So that'll probably be out 6, 7, 8, and 9 o'clock. 9, probably 8, between 8 and 10. I mean, if I started that right now, I probably wouldn't get done until 6. So I'll probably 8, somewhere between 8 and 10. Check for it before you go to bed tonight. How about that? That's probably a good rule of thumb. So hopefully this was helpful for everyone, and I answered enough questions. I guess I got one last one from Alyssa here asking about the flooding in Tennessee with the cone. Okay, so let's go back up to the cone here. What's the concern for flooding up here? It's a concern. I'm not going to lie to you and say NBD, no big deal. These folks don't need another 2 to 4 inches of rain. They don't need 30 to 40 mile an hour wind. They just don't. There is a concern for the folks in Tennessee for sure. What that concern is, down trees and more flooding with already saturated ground. Will you start thinking about Katrina effects for the Pine Belt given Cat 4, Cat 5 storm? Okay, more questions. That's fine. I'll stick around and answer questions. That's why I'm here. Jessica, so here's the thing about Katrina and the difference between now and then. We learned as a society so much from Hurricane Katrina that a lot of things changed after that. And I don't think you would see similar impacts again from a similar kind of storm because, number one, every storm's different, so you're never going to see the same exact thing. But also, because we learned so much from that and many things have changed, you're probably going to end up in a situation where even if you got the same storm again, the same things wouldn't happen. There's infrastructure, there's just stuff in place to keep that from happening. So I don't think that you have to worry in this situation, at least at this point, like, hey, I'm going to be without water for 3 weeks, or I'm going to be without, electricity for 3 weeks, or it's going to be, 24 hours in a line to get gas at the gas station. Now, I will say this. Everyone knows in these types of situations, there's always a run to the gas station. People tend to go a little crazy. You guys remember maybe it was a couple years ago, the people that were putting gas in plastic bags. Maybe that was the start of COVID. Anyway, they're putting grocery bags. They're just filling up plastic grocery bags with gasoline or big giant Tupperware tubs with gasoline. I don't know what people are going to do with that gasoline because it's not like you can pour a Tupperware thing into your car. And that's certainly not a safe way to transport something that's flammable and that evaporates. I mean, gas evaporates. So by the time you get home, you've lost X% of that gas. But do know that, just again, as an aside, keep that in mind with what happens with gasoline in situations like this. But no, I don't think any two storm is the same or any two storms impacts are the same. Is it going to be a Cat 4 or Cat 5 now? No, the official forecast is a 3. My point was that given the water temperatures and given the atmosphere, there is no reason to put a ceiling on how strong the storm could potentially get. The current forecast, given what the very smart meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center think, is a Cat 3. It would not surprise me to see a 4. It wouldn't surprise me to get a 5 out of this. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen, and it certainly doesn't mean that that's the forecast. The other part of this is always prepare. Hold on, let me go back to always prepare for one category higher than the forecast. That is what FEMA tells people all the time. So if it's going to be a Cat 3 at landfall, you best be preparing for a Cat 4. And so keep that in mind too. And that way you're actually prepared. If you want to say, well, I'm going to prepare for a Cat 5, well, guess what? You're going to be super prepared then, aren't you? You're going to have people knocking on your door. Let's see here. Yeah, no, I'm happy to help you guys, seriously. The plastic bag thing was during the Colonial Pipeline hack. All right, thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. That was, my goodness. All right, and I think I caught all the way back up again. All right. So thanks everyone for checking this out. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask. And again, I'll try and have that county by county breakdown for you guys coming up a little bit later this evening. I would check back before bed. I'll try and have it on there for you guys. And I'm going to try to include some of the parishes of Louisiana as well as some of the counties of Alabama as well. Because I know a lot of you folks out there have friends and family in those places, and you can pass it along to them so that they're prepared as well. We got to get as many people understanding the risks and understanding what they're about to deal with as we can. Oh my God. So, yeah, okay. Just making sure I'm all caught up. Everyone have yourself a good afternoon. Stay safe and get prepared now. Now's the time to do it. Clear the brush away from the house. Trim those branches. You see a dead branch in a tree outside of your home, get rid of it today. Why even risk it? You know, if you got kind of a sickly tree out there that you can kind of maybe chop up some of those branches, do it now. Don't risk it. Get prepared. Make sure you got plenty of water, plenty of food, and do what you can to be prepared for what's coming as we head through the next couple of days. I'll try and have an update for you guys coming up a little bit later tonight. See you guys around.